Thank you so much for joining our webinar, Laboratories of Democracy, Global Innovations in School and Youth Participation. My name is Nikhil Kumar. I'm the resource manager at People Powered, and I'm based in Brooklyn, New York. But People Powered staff is based all over the world. I'm excited to moderate today's event. Next slide, please. Before we get started, let's go over some technical details. This session will use automated translated captions. If you prefer to follow with captions in another language, please click on Show Captions and choose your preferred language, as you can see on the screen here. If you can't find this option, please let us know in the chat. Ryan and Maria will be assisting you to get the captions in your language. So why are we here today? Today, we're going to engage with regional experts and case studies on youth and school participation from Spain, Brazil, India, and beyond. We'll be exploring key strategies for engaging children and youth in collective decision-making. And you'll discover new resources and capacity building support to put school and youth participation into practice, including new step-by-step guidance in the participation playbook, impact data, and a collection of practical materials. And for today's agenda, we'll start with introductions, and then you'll hear short presentations from our speakers, a little world tour of school and youth participation. And then we'll have a really interesting roundtable with our speakers. And we'll close with concrete ways that you can use the resources that we share to support your work. Next slide. I'm very happy to be joined today by our distinguished group of speakers. I'm just going to introduce them very briefly right now, but speakers, please introduce yourselves a little bit more when you speak so that the audience can get to know you. So we'll be hearing today from Cristian Arriviaga, who's a participation specialist at CoGlobal in Spain, Emily Espildora, who's a researcher at the Social Knowledge Network in Brazil, Sanskriti Menon at the Center for Environment Education in India, and Santiago Barail, Policy Officer at the European Partnership for Democracy in Belgium. Next slide. And I want to also thank our partners in today's webinar, the Center for Environment Education, CoGlobal, the European Partnership for Democracy and the Youth Democracy Cohort, and the Social Knowledge Network. I'm not going to try to pronounce the Portuguese name, but we're very happy to have all of these partners with us. If you're just joining us at People Powered for the first time, I want to give you a quick introduction. So People Powered is a global hub for participatory democracy. We build the power and improve the impact of organizations and leaders around the world who are building a more participatory democracy. And in essence, we're like a global union for participatory democracy workers. People Powered wants to be part of the solution to big global challenges. So we work to increase and improve participation in government to expand people's power over key decisions. And we do this by creating communications, resources, providing training and mentorship to help governments move down a path toward more participatory programs and policies. And we do this together with the global community of practice. So before you hear from our speakers, I want to hear from you guys in the audience. So please share in the chat your answers to this question. What's one opportunity you're excited about when it comes to school and youth participation? Don't be shy. If you're also completely new to this topic, you can tell us that as well. Okay, great. Kids seeing that another form of democracy is possible. That's great. Inspiration. Helping municipalities put systems in place. Better governance through youth participation. prevent mistrust in institutions, and in the long run, right-wing voters, influencing and sharing common goals, showing kids that they can participate even if it's not voting. That's very true. Youth councils. Okay, nice. In New York City, looking to expand voting to all students. That's exciting. Strengthening democracy, empowering youth. Okay, awesome. Okay, you guys are already very well experienced in this, but hopefully we can also add some insights for your work today. Can we go to the next slide? Okay, follow-up question. What's one challenge you're facing in advocating for planning or implementing participatory programs in schools and or with youth? We want to know how you can be supported in this work. Funding and lack of time for facilitators and participants. We definitely hear that a lot. Getting youth engaged and interested. So how can you meet them where they are? Tools to help young people with disabilities to contribute. There's a really interesting study actually about the inclusion of students with disabilities in a participatory budgeting process. Funding and commitment, lack of free time, optics of giving power to young people. So kind of building political support for that. Having organizations take youth voice seriously. Political repression. I think that's a big theme in a lot of countries right now. Not in the curriculum. We also definitely recommend incorporating curricular support for school participation. Okay, so this is a great start, you guys. We're definitely going to get into all of these topics and more. So next slide, please. I'm just going to share a bit about how we at People Powered are coming at this issue. So why should we focus on youth and school participation? Next slide. As the most challenging issues of our time, from climate change to technology's impact on well-being to violent conflict accelerate, it's critical that children and young people have an opportunity to shape their future. Governments and schools around the world are experimenting with novel models of governance, deliberation, and collaboration to engage children and youth in decision-making. And research shows that participation at a young age can develop active citizens with lifelong habits of participation, strengthen school communities, and encourage engagement in local government. At People Powered, we have been working on this issue from a couple of different angles. So one angle is that for this year, through our annual decision-making process, People Powered Decides, People Powered members, which are global participation experts, chose to prioritize work to develop practical resources to support participation and deliberation in schools. So really identifying a need for practical support to implement school participation. Next slide. We've also supported, through the Inclusive Democracy Accelerator, government and civil society practitioners implementing inclusive participatory programs, including with youth. Next slide. So today we'll be launching the practical resources that we've been developing this year and in previous years to the public. We developed participation playbook tracks for school and youth inclusive participation, which provide step-by-step guidance to develop action plans for participatory programs. We also synthesized global research on the impacts of school participation. And we compiled a collection of practical resources, including lesson plans, sample materials, guides, and toolkits. Next slide. How did we develop the resources? So at People Powered, we try to practice what we preach. So we've really tried to co-develop all of these resources with the participatory democracy community. So you can see that this process has been ongoing for over a year from the first conception of the project in PP Decides. And then we agreed to an implementation plan with our members, and then collaborated with different experts, including from CoGlobal, a school participation expert committee, People Powered's research committee, as well as partner organizations. And we gathered input through a series of member workshops, and now we're disseminating the resources. So now with that as background for you all, I think we're ready to head off on our world tour of school and youth participation, which will take us from Spain to Brazil to India and beyond. So we'll start with Cristian Arriviaga from CoGlobal in Spain. Over to you, Cristian.
Hi, thanks, Nikhil. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here, for the invitation. Ryan, if you don't mind, going to the next slide and the second one, I think. The next one, yeah. So first, thanks. A little bit of background information. As mentioned, my name is Cristian Arrivillaga, and I'm the project manager for children and youth at CoGlobal. I'm currently based in Malaga, Spain. So CoGlobal is a social organization that designs participatory democracy processes, fostering inclusive dialogues between governments and citizens. And I've been involved in CoGlobal at 3 different opportunities, and I've seen the evolution of the methodology that supports children and youth processes. So for a really long time at CoGlobal, we have wondered, what does it really take for children to participate meaningfully in a classroom? That's what our approach, inclusive classroom-based participation, tries to answer. Next slide, please. So inclusive classroom-based participation, or ICBP, is a methodological approach we've been developing at CoGlobal for over a decade. We're still not fully committed to the name, but it describes something we've been doing consistently across programs like the Children's Agora, Objective Sustainability, and essentially every classroom-based project with children. The key point behind this methodology is that many participatory processes can be adapted for children, and they work very well. But this one was designed from the start with childhood in mind. But what does that really mean? Next slide, please. Okay, so there are 3 main characteristics. First, the sessions happen inside the school schedule and with a whole class group. This means that not only the children who are naturally outspoken or interested, but also those who are shy, disengaged, or unsure of their abilities become a part of the process. Second, activities are play-based. Even though we all enjoy playful learning, for children, it's not just enjoyable. It's how they naturally learn and stay engaged. So we redesign discussions and tasks so they feel fun and accessible for them. And third, ICBP is an umbrella for different forms of inclusion. So inclusive deliberation, gender-focused practices, and an awareness of how intersecting identities can shape participation. For example, what it means to be a girl and from a different country. So in practice, this means that identifying children who might feel less invited into collective decisions, basically less empowered, and intentionally creating opportunities for their voices to be heard and valued. Next slide, please. So the process follows a series of stages. So information, diagnosis, proposal design, deliberation, and decision-making, which is similar to many participatory models. The key difference is the role of the facilitator. This person needs to be very sensitive to get to know the group quickly. the different profiles of children and the relationships between them, so they can guide the process in a genuinely inclusive way. Next slide. So over the years, we've implemented programs like the Children's Agora and Objective Sustainability all over the south of Spain in more than 80 municipalities. And we've also carried out a program in the town of San Jose in Uruguay. I was actually just seeing that there's someone from Uruguay in the chat. So, hi. Next slide, please. So these are images of some of the processes we carried out in La Costa del Sol of Malaga, which within the Objective Sustainability Project, where we worked on learning about the Sustainability Development Goals. Session after session, they learn more about specific SDGs. They visit the town hall and talk to the representatives about how their local government works and are guided through the process of collective decision making. Children were asked to design an awareness campaigns for their community about SDGs, but they decided what they wanted to do. So in the left top corner, they came from a town that they decided to do a gincana to collect and classify residues from all over their town. At the top right corner, they designed signs and chanted about the SDGs in a town plaza. These were really small children, so they were very excited to take part of the process. At the bottom left, children decided on a games day with the senior community to teach them how to classify residues and about other SDGs. And they were also very excited about doing like traditional games to get their senior community more involved and more comfortable with games they were usually they were probably played when they were younger. And finally, at the bottom right, they designed signs and marched all over the city towards their local house of culture to present to their political representatives, excuse me, and ask them how they were working the 2030 agenda into their own local agendas. So these processes helped strengthen not only their knowledge, but also their presence in their communities. Next slide, please. So we've also studied how this approach affects children's psychosocial development. Across different programs, we found increases in psychological empowerment, in subjective well-being, institutional and community knowledge, and skills that are essential for democratic coexistence, like active listening. One of the most striking findings is related to group cohesion. We've observed a 30% to 60% reduction in students who previously had no friends or who were not trusted or liked by their peers. These children begin to take on a more meaningful role within the group. We also see fewer negative interactions, things like small conflicts or disrespectful language, and more positive ones, such as active listening and responding constructively to others. And if you're interested, I'd be happy to share the published studies behind these results. So next slide, please. That is what I wanted to share with you today. And thank you very much. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have at the Q&A. So over to you, Nikhil.
Thank you so much for sharing, Christian. We really admire CoGlobal's innovative approach to school participation, and that's why we were very happy to work with you when developing the participation playbook content, which I'll talk a bit more about later. So now we're going to move from Spain across the Atlantic to Brazil, and we're also going to talk not about school participation, but about youth participation. So I'm happy to call on Emily Espaldora to share more.
Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon. I'm Emily. I'm from Brazil. I work at Social Knowledge Network, or in Portuguese, Rede de Conhecimento Social. and I'm gonna tell about the experience of youth climate participation in Recife. And next slide, please. And our project is called Youth and Climate Recife, or in Portuguese, Jovens no Clima Recife. And this idea of this project was created in a people-powered program that is Climate Democracy Accelerator. The program was created by Marconi, that was the youth secretary of Recife's City Hall. He participated in this accelerator in 2023. And the idea comes because Recife is one of the most vulnerable cities to climate change in the world. And we see a lack of participation in Brazil, mostly the youth participation. We are living a political polarization here, and people don't want to talk, don't want to participate in public decisions. So we see that we are living a democratic crisis here. And we believe that young people have the potential to promote changes, to promote discussions about the future. And that's why we created this Youth in Climate Recife. We want to put the young people in the center of decisions about their own future. In the program, Marconi could meet the playbook, some methodologies of participation like the Citizens Assembly, meet some strategies and know how to promote a climate assembly. And what we need to hold this kind of participatory processes, and how to include in an appropriate manner the youth. We were funded by the Youth Climate Action Fund of Bloomberg to promote a citizens' assembly and a call for proposals to implement projects led by young people in Recife in 2 years, 2024 and 2025. Next slide, please. So we held a climate assembly with 36 young people to deliberate and suggest actions to make the city more resilient to climate change. And we based our discussions in Recife's local climate plan. And we wrote a letter of recommendations to the Recife City Hall. But we also used these recommendations in the call for proposals in 2025 edition of Youth in Climate. And we also incorporated some recommendations into the participatory climate plan of the federal government of Brazil with these young people from the Citizens Assembly. Next slide, please. And we have 2 editions of this call for proposals. We funded 28 projects led by young people in Recife to implement climate solutions based on the local climate action plan and this letter of recommendations from the Citizens Assembly. And the culminance of this project was the participation of 32 young people from these granted projects in the COP30 in Belém in this month. So here is a photo from the COP30 with the young people that was discussing and present the lessons they get in implementing these projects in Recife. And we was the biggest delegation of young people participating in the COP30 in this year. Next slide, please. And I want to share some high points. Our project, we could involve young people in all stages, and I think that this is a high point because we get young people participating in the planning of the project, in the recruiting participants, in thinking the content of discussion and moderating the assembly. We had some specific quotas for young people, like LGBT plus, indigenous people, people with disabilities, in the Citizens Assembly, but also in the call for proposals. And this project can show to us, the experience shows to us how we can create and implement climate solutions together, how civil society and young people can act together to achieve the government's climate goals and choose priorities and build solutions together. So it is an experience that showed that we can act together, we can work together to improve, to guarantee that our future can be better to everyone. So that's all. In next steps, we want to continue this process to promote, include more and more young people in participatory spaces. We participate. We have. We are looking for some financial to promote one more edition of Citizens Assembly and continue the cover proposals, but we are looking yet. That's all. Thank you. I still touch.
Thank you so much, Emily. It's super inspiring to see how deeply integrated young people are in climate governance in Recife. And also I think it was very cool to see the photo from COP30 to really see the impact of that program on the youth and also on climate policy making. So now we're gonna go to India and we're gonna go back to the school setting, but still on an environmental theme. So I'm gonna pass the mic to Sanskriti Menon.
Thank you, Nikhil, and hello to everyone from India. I really loved the initiative shared by Christian and Emily. And somewhat in the same vein, but also different, I would share something from our experience in India from the Center for Environment Education. Next, Nikhil. So the CEE, Nikhil, could you go to the next slide? Yeah. So just a little about CEE. This is a national institute which was established over 40 years ago as a center of excellence of the Ministry of Environment and Forests in India. And in school-based environmental education, CEE works at the policy level with the national bodies in charge of the school curriculum framework, also state bodies, the syllabi and textbooks. And we work also directly with teachers and schools. And at our campus in Ahmedabad, in India, we also have a early learning center, which is called the Planet Discovery Center. And we have offices in different parts of India because we believe that environmental education has to be locale specific. So that small India map shows the location of our state and regional offices and project offices. And next one. So when we look at the goal of environmental education, could you go to the next slide? When we look at the goal of environmental education, it is essentially to strengthen understanding and concern about environmental issues, about sustainability issues, and also to develop the learners' skills, attitudes, values, and action, their sense of agency to address issues. And this, we believe, can best take place through learner-centered and locale-specific constructivist approaches, which have participation as a foundational principle. And you would realize that, in many parts of India, school learning has been very traditional, very rote-based, and it is really to integrate these activity-based approaches or project-based approaches, constructivist approaches, that itself has been, major focus of CE's work and several other environmental educators in India as well. And the picture you see on this slide, it is a booklet from a flagship program, which is called Paryavaran Mitra, and which means Friends of the Environment. And the title of that booklet, it's Explore, Discover, Think, and Act, which is like a mantra for environmental education. Now, basically, students participate in constructing their learning, thinking, and acting. And this little booklet, the right side little box is many different languages. So when we say locale specific approaches, one important aspect in India is languages, as we have many different states and many different languages, and this booklet itself is in at least 11 different languages. Now going forward, Nikhil, if you change the slide. Yeah. Apart from what happens inside the classroom by the teacher, there is a focus on now increasingly on project-based learning and through student bodies like eco clubs, which generally involve students at the middle school level. They could be early years eco clubs as well, but typically they're at the 6th, 7th, and 8th standard level. And of course, in higher secondary schools also they are there, but generally it's a middle school level. And students would get involved in conducting environmental audits and short studies to find out, basically things that they're concerned about. And then they would share the results with the rest of the school, and then prepare solutions and try to involve the whole school and sometimes also the community in implementing solutions. So that's essentially what happens, that it would be maybe the 6th or the 7th standard that takes on the role of the Eco Club, and then they have this approach of exploring issues. Going forward, I'll just show some pictures of the types of topics that they take up. So here there's, this religious festival, and we create little idols. And, over the last 15, 20 years, we've seen an increasing use of plaster materials rather than natural materials. So here the Eco Club takes on activities like going back to more natural materials and recovering the clay. Looking at things like butterfly gardens or waste management on the school campus. And also, and interestingly, looking at how water is managed in the village, and what's the status of groundwater in the village. Of course, organic farming, and then also things like going out into the community and taking out like a rally or a procession through the village to talk about waste management. Going forward, we have also examples of intergenerational learning. And Nikhil, if you could change the slide. So these are two initiatives which are particular favorites, and they're developed by the CE Biodiversity Program, my colleague Satish, who anchors the program. And here, many of these schools are located in a biodiversity hotspot region, or they were involved in a statewide biodiversity conservation education program. And the top left image is really it's the students were involved in learning about changes in food systems, and this they did by talking to people in their parents' generation and the grandparents' generation, and tracking how food systems have changed, and then learning about what are healthier, more nutrition, what is better nutrition, and then going on to either documenting or trying to do a school nutrition garden, those kinds of activities. And the poster that you see on the right is actually many different mango varieties. And the idea here was that the mango varieties were documented by students by talking to elders in their village. And, there were about 60 schools involved, and together they documented over 250 different varieties of mangoes in the Western Ghats in Maharashtra. So these were pretty amazing sort of projects, and they brought together a lot of learning because of the collaboration that they could do amongst themselves with the community and with schools along the biodiversity hotspot region. So going forward, Nikhil, essentially it's basically we feel that education for sustainable development it strengthens inclusion because of the activity-based teaching and learning, where all students can be involved in different ways in finding out, about the topic and then taking action. And so it increases that there is something that I can do. And also these approaches provide opportunities to involve families and communities and build on their knowledge and culture as well. And this symbol that you see on the right is the handprint, which we see as the antidote to the footprint, and it represents the positive actions we take for sustainability. So we feel this is really empowering, and it is something that gives confidence and agency to students. And what I feel about the work that we are launching today through People Powered, it's this that it's really exciting for me to bring together the domains of environmental education and civic participation. I think they go together very, very, very closely, and it's really great to have this discussion today. I want to share also that there are, of course, many schools in India which are part of our environmental education work. C is also a member of this global network called the Foundation for Environmental Education, which is a membership-based organization, and Eco Schools is a program of C, which C implements in India, and there are member organizations across the world. There are about 101 countries that participate. So there are many, many schools and organizations who would probably love to learn more about the school participation resources that are being launched here today. And Nikhil, the next slide. Lastly, I want to say that there is this global opportunity with the UNESCO Greening Education Partnership, which aims to have about 50% of all schools as green schools by 2030. And effective participation is an essential component of the GEP framework. So I think that the resources that are being launched today will be tremendously useful to advance greening education, both for school-related policymakers, administrators, communities, teachers, and students. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much,
Over
Sanskriti.
to you, Nikhil.
That was really interesting. And I think what you said about kind of the intersection of environmental education and civic participation is really spot on. And I think it really shows that it's possible to embed like civic participation development into the curriculum in schools and really develop these active citizens from a young age. And I also appreciated the way you talked about both classroom level participation at the curricular level as well as school-wide opportunities, and also engaging external stakeholders. So thank you so much for that. We're now going to get a global perspective on youth participation. Now that we've had some country examples from Spain to Brazil to India. So now I'm going to call on Santiago to share about his work at the Youth Democracy Cohort. Santiago.
Yeah, thank you, Nikhil. Very nice to meet you all. So as Nikhil was saying, my name is Santiago Barrel. I am a policy officer of the European Partnership for Democracy. So I'm based in Belgium, but I'm originally from Paraguay. So not to be confused with the fact that I might be Belgian. As part of my work, I do manage the Youth Democracy Cohort, which if we go to the next slide, is a bit of a platform, a network, a hub for everything that has to do between young people and political processes. So you can think of us a little bit as the platform right now to interact with or to get engaged with if you're looking to work with young people and involve them in formal political processes or also informal political processes. So this is a platform to promote youth political and civic engagement, the overall understanding of democratic principles, and in general, more diversity and inclusion. So if you are working, as some of the fellow speakers are working with young people on political processes, we are open to member applications. Right now, we have a network of 650 member organizations constantly growing, and this comprises everything from the largest civil society organizations all the way to like public authorities or political parties, and then all the way down to like, the more community-based grassroots organizations. My organization, EPD, is one of the 9 current co-leaders. Right now, we're actually undergoing a bit of a reform process of the governance system, so there will be a new group of co-leadership soon, early into 2026. So we're very excited to actually, this is the first time that we are participating in a webinar of People Powered, but we're very excited to engage a little bit more with the community of People Powered, since you guys are constantly working to innovate democracy. So we're very keen to provide a little bit the youth perspective from this angle. Next slide. So very quickly, just on what members get from the Youth Democracy Cohort, our purpose of being, a little bit of the opportunities that we offer. So we like to split them a little bit in 3 in terms of connect, learn, and advocate. For connect, you can think of us a little bit as an opportunity to meet potential allies, partners, change makers, whether you need a speaker, whether you need a partner to apply for a project, or whether you just need to exchange experiences or challenges. It's also a platform for you to showcase the work that you're doing to a bit more of a global audience. We're very active on social media, but we also have great connections to a wide variety of international actors. And then, of course, just on a bit of a space to find events and funding opportunities, which we constantly share with our members. On the second element, we are a bit of a knowledge hub right now with all of the evidence and knowledge that we've produced in terms of youth political participation. So we do offer similar webinars such as this one on a bi-monthly basis. We've done work on the cost of running for politics for young people. We've done studies around the whole ecosystem of youth policies at the national level. And we've also provided fellowships to young academics. And then finally, I think what a lot of us wants to do is to advocate, is to see policy change. So we do that through concrete national and local processes where we provide financial and technical support. But we also like sort of carry on more ad hoc advocacy efforts to influence policies, both at the international, regional, and national level. Next slide, please. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit here about some insights from our Global Youth Participation Index, also known as the GP. This is our flagship research initiative that took 2.5 years to build. So if we go on the next slide. What the index is a tool for you guys, for everyone who's here in this call, for civil society practitioners, for activists, but also for policymakers to understand a little bit where the countries are at in terms of youth participation. So it collects existing data that is out there, but it also produces data where it was missing. So in total, it covers around 141 countries. And there are also possibilities when you go into the website to see countries that we couldn't really fully cover because we didn't have all of the data available. And what it does really is to dispel a little bit some of the main myths that we observe around young people participating in politics. And of course, the main one that we constantly hear about is that young people right now don't want to participate in politics, that they are apathetic, that they are rather stay sitting in their sofas or typing in their keyboards. And the reality revealed by the Global Youth Participation Index is that the situation is very bleak. That young people face a lot of very systemic, high barriers to participating in political institutions, in civic space, in elections. And this is a global issue. If we go on the next slide, please. As you can see, the overall score isn't very good. And what I would really like to draw your attention to is the disparity in the scores for the different dimensions. So there are 4 dimensions you can see that are taken into account in the index: political affairs, elections, socioeconomic, and civic space. And as you can very clearly see, young people are much more involved on the socioeconomic and civic space dimension than they are in political affairs elections. The way I personally like to look at it is that the first 2 are a bit more of the formal politics, and the second one are a bit more of the informal, sort of local politics. And so they can see a very clear disparity that exists, and this is a very, very much a global issue. If we go on to the next slide. But talking a little bit more about what this data says in terms of story and in terms of narrative, I think as you've probably all seen, young people are in the streets right now. Also, this worldwide phenomenon that we know now as the Gen Z protest that has implicated so many countries from different corners of the world. This is really a show of how young people have the energy to change. They have the energy to organize themselves. This is just a different way of doing it than the one that we are traditionally used to see. So for us, it's really a time to channel that energy into formal decision making and power. But what that means is not necessarily what you expect. And I think government, and if we're being very self-critical here in this community, which is mostly civil society, is that we are also failing to meet young people where they are. All of our initiatives mostly target what we like to call organized young people who are already working or engaged in civil society initiatives or who are members of political parties, meaning those who are already engaged in politics and without our initiatives or without our help would probably be there anyway. The people who are participating in protests are people who wouldn't necessarily be involved in politics. They don't necessarily want to join a political party, or they don't necessarily want to work for civil society organizations or benefit from an initiative led by a civil society organization. So this is the dynamic that we're facing right now. These Gen Z protests, I think, are the best example of it. Young people today are unorganized. Protest movements are decentralized, they're leaderless, they're informal, they're issue-based. And yeah, like I just said, they just don't want to necessarily become civil society or political parties. For some of them, that is the choice that they want to make, but that is not just the only options that are out there available. And of course, this applies very, very key, and it has always applied to student movements in schools and universities. Student movements are, for most young people, the first opportunity that they have to engage in any sort of political engagement. And engaging them for us, again, both for public authorities and also for the community here of civil society, it implies very different dynamics and consideration than just engaging traditional actors. And again, the final objective of our initiatives and activities, the final sort of KPIs, if you like, shouldn't be to turn the young people who are engaged in student movement into civil society staff or politicians. That shouldn't be a metric of success. Yes, to the next slide. And then, of course, it's always great to talk about the global perspective, but I wanted to talk a bit more concretely about a case study of an initiative that we supported, specifically related to school participation in elections in Colombia. This was done via our partner, Civics Colombia. I'm not sure if there's anyone here from Colombia, but for those who don't know, Colombia has a very specific system of youth municipal councils. These are bodies made up of young people between 14 and 28 that are voted by only young people. And they have a specific place in the sort of decision-making system at the local level, so the municipal level, in every single municipality in Colombia. There you go. I see some people present here from Colombia. And I really like this example because this is really connecting the informal, which is, again, student movements at the school level, or just like literally students at the school level, teenagers, with the formal political process. And as Nikhil very rightly asked yesterday when I was presenting this case to him, this is not a mock simulation sort of exercise. This is a very formal process that is a law, like law-binded, where young people actually get a chance to have a real role in politics. This demographic, the demographic that Civics Colombia decided to focus on, the one from 14 to 17, was largely ignored by political institutions, traditional civil society organizations, and political parties, for a very simple reason that that the teenagers weren't going to vote in the election next year in Colombia. So therefore, they weren't the most important demographic to mobilize around the elections that were taking place, the youth elections that were taking place this year. Two very quick considerations that I want to draw from this little initiative, as we are still waiting for the final results, since this just happened last month, is the role of teachers and school management. I think it's very easy to focus all of our initiatives on the students themselves, but there is a lot of attention to be paid, and this was very rightly observed and targeted by Civics, the role of teachers and the school management. Very often, if you go through them, you are able to have a sort of a waterfall effect, catalyst effect, where it really trickles down into the students and the whole culture around the school. And then finally, I think Christiane already mentioned in her first intervention is how crucial it is to gamify activities and dialogues. And I wouldn't even say that should be limited to students and teenagers. I think this should even apply to adults. I think a lot of our activities should be gamified. As Christiane very rightly pointed it out, it's not just a way to make things more interesting, but it is also the main way that kids learn. It's one of the main ways that we all actually learn. So this was very much done for the exercises and activities and workshops that Civics was doing to show young people how they can vote, how they can become candidates, and how they can access the information that they need to become either candidates or voters in the elections. I think that is it. If there's no next slide, correct? So I think I'm throwing it back to you, Nico.
Yeah, thank you, Santiago. That was super interesting. I really appreciated that you highlighted the role of teachers and school management. That was also a finding when we were doing our research this year on the need to support teachers in school participation processes. And I also appreciated kind of your provocations about how we think about where we should meet young people and kind of like this difference between informal versus formal spaces. And then also what you said about kind of questioning how we define success for these processes and not just wanting to produce civil society staff and politicians. So a lot of really, as you said, really good food for thought. We're gonna have our roundtable discussion shortly. If you guys have any additional questions, please add them to the chat and we'll try to address them. Before we get to that, I do want to share some exciting practical resources to support your work. And as I mentioned before, these have been co-created with the people-powered community. So a lot of the insights that you've been hearing today are incorporated into these resources. And yeah, so next slide, please. So the first resource that we're sharing, and feel free to check it out via the QR code, is step-by-step guidance in the participation playbook. So the participation playbook is a website that People Powered has created and sustains with our global community that synthesizes global knowledge on participation and makes it widely available in an accessible format. It walks you through the key design questions for planning a participatory program, such as participatory budgeting or a citizens' assembly, providing just-in-time information, data, and options each step of the way. And this year, with CoGlobal, we developed school-specific tracks of the playbook. So with this new content, you'll be able to develop action plans for school citizens' assemblies, legislative theater, participatory policymaking, and participatory budgeting. And these tracks are actually already being used in the Democratic Innovations Accelerator, which is a collaboration between People Powered and Nets for Dem. We're also making public the Inclusive Democracy module of the playbook, which has been in use in the Inclusive Democracy Accelerator. And you can use this to design inclusive participatory programs with youth, as well as with women, displaced people, and other groups that you want to focus on in your participation. Next slide. Another resource that we're launching today is impact data on participation in schools. So our research work this year took stock of the peer-reviewed literature so that evidence-based insights can be harnessed to inform the practice of school participation. To synthesize this impact data, we began by collecting about 35 peer-reviewed papers and book chapters. And then we summarized the main findings of each paper and synthesized 11 key findings, which are generally supported by more than one paper. And the data is based on research from Australia, Chile, Colombia, Czechia, Finland, Peru, etc. And because the specifics of process design, political context, and other variables play an important role, the findings include insights on how these factors can shape a participatory program's ability to affect change, as well as why some studies have divergent findings, and what practitioners can do to increase the likelihood that a program will have the desired impact. And the findings are structured in 3 groups: impacts on people, so that's mainly about students; impacts on communities, in this case, really the school community; and impacts on governments, which generally is local governments in the school context. And yeah, so I encourage you guys to check this out. It's available both as a PDF, and you can also explore the data in an Airtable. Next slide, please. We're also launching a compilation of practical resources. So the new guidance and research insights that we developed contribute to a growing body of practical resources that have been developed by organizations and practitioners around the world, including many who are on this call right now. And those include lesson plans, guides, toolkits, sample materials. So we've curated the most useful materials and gathered them in People Powered's online resource center to help you benefit from the creativity and expertise of your peers. So to access them, you can go to our online resource center and use the filter Institution School. You can also go to our collections page of the resource center, and there's a section on that page for the school resources. So I encourage you guys to take a look at these resources, share them with people who you think will find them useful, maybe share them with the teachers in your life. And please tell us if you find them interesting, if you use them in your work. We'd love to hear from you. We also want to know how we can improve them, how we can make them more useful in the future for your context. All feedback is welcome. Okay, so now we're going to move to the Q&A roundtable discussion. So yeah, I think Ryan, for now, you can stop sharing slides. And just to start off the Q&A, there were a few questions in the chat during the speaker presentations that were kind of like specific to the cases that you guys presented. So I'm just going to start with those. So for Christian, in classroom-based participatory budgeting, how do other students in the school participate? And yeah, it might not just be participatory budgeting, but generally classroom-based participation. Can other students in the school propose ideas or vote or something else?
So actually, we tend to work with just like 1 or 2 classrooms in the school. So they're not exactly engaged in the same way, but it depends on the school, on the municipality, if they get involved in the proposal phase or stage. But they also sometimes do like awareness campaigns or just like presentations all over school to let them know that the process is going on and what they have been decided. There are some schools where it's like a traditional thing that I don't know, the 3rd grade they do the PBs, so they know beforehand that when they go to the 3rd grade they're going to be a part of the PBs. So it depends on the specific context.
Thank you, Christian. That's very helpful. Okay, we also had a couple of questions for Emily about the case in Recife. So first of all, what was the age range of participants? How were participants recruited or selected? And what types of training and specific support did you provide to the youth?
Thank you, Nikhil. The age range of participants was 15 to 29 years. This is the youth age range in Brazil's law. And the participants of the assembly were selected through a lottery. We had recruitment door to door, which we invited all the youth population to participate. and we sent some invites from the Cities Hall app that they have in Recife. And after this, we did this lottery to the assembly. And the projects that received the funding went through a selection process with a committee composed of representatives, organizations, and young people. And in the first call for proposals, we had some young people from the Citizens Assembly in this committee. And in the second year, the second edition, we have some leaders, young leaders from the city in this committee too. And the supporting and training process, we had different types of assistance during the execution of the Citizens Assembly. In the Citizens Assembly, we had each participant received a financial amount, as well as transportation and meal assistance during the 4 days of the assembly. And in the first days, we focused in training about climate change and the way we can participate in some spaces from the city's hall that exists. And all these sessions of training were conducted by young leaders from the seats itself. So we have some collectives, movements of young people that work with climate change, and they conducted this training. And for the funded projects, we previewed a simplified call for proposals. And we have some training on project implementation and also a mentorship through all the entire project implementation. And we had other actions too, but in general, was that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Emily. That's really helpful to understand the concrete support that's needed for a citizens' assembly. And for our roundtable, we collected questions that the audience submitted when registering, and then we kind of like synthesized them. So hopefully this will be interesting for everybody in the audience. Thank you for staying with us. I know it's past the hour now, but we're going to go until the half hour. So my first question is kind of focused on the school setting and going back to the need to engage teachers in school participation. So I'm curious how teachers and other school leaders can be supported to make this transition from using old pedagogical approaches to newer models of engagement with their students. I'm curious, Sanskriti, if you have any insights on that. And also,
Yeah, Nikhil, and go ahead.
yeah, no, go ahead. Sorry.
Okay, and I was saying that I think in India, especially, we do have especially in-service teacher orientation programs, and some of the programs like the National Green Corps, which is supported by the Ministry of Environment, and the Environment Service Scheme that I was talking about in Maharashtra. These do have support for teachers for teacher orientation. And I think it's important that governments do make this kind of opportunity available to teachers to upgrade their professional skills. It's also important that pre-service training, which is the Bachelor's of Education or the Master's of Education, elementary education, that teacher trainees do have the opportunity, and those syllabi, teaching approaches, pedagogy, they are also upgraded to reflect the need for a more constructivist, activity-based approaches, which allow for democratic participation. And I think it's actually possible because the opportunity that I was talking about, which is a global movement, the Greening Education Partnership. That is something that UNESCO is reaching out to ministries of education for all UN member states to encourage them to take up these changes in how curricula are designed and how teacher capacity is built. It's also part of the SDG 4.7, which is on global citizenship education. So there's movements that are there, which the participation movement should also connect with and tap into to support teachers over time. Yeah.
Yeah, those are really helpful tips on how to build the capacity of teachers and kind of not assume that, if you want to implement participation in schools and you tell teachers to do it, they can just do it right away. They need support in terms of their capacity, their time, and also to connect it to like government policy and international movements. So that's really helpful.
Can I say one more thing? I think
Yes.
both informal networks as well as professional teacher networks. Those are important approaches too to work with. For example, there is this climate educators network in India, and there are probably similar networks across. Also, maybe fellowships and grants for teachers who are interested to actually support them to take on such self-professional development, tap into resources. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Christiane?
Yeah, I think that involving and supporting teachers is something we at Global have been working towards. And I think maybe in a more informal way, as the studio was mentioning, like making them a part of the process that is already ongoing, it's very important. Just having them be an important part, maybe involving them in the design of the activities or the process, getting their feedback, not only about how the group works and how they're responding, but also in their area of expertise. If they're a teacher of civic education, maybe just ask them a bit about what are topics they have been working on lately, or if how we can contribute with the information we bring to the sessions, to their class, to the what they're doing in the classroom, and just trying to find like points of conversion, like convergence points, like because in our experience, it's really hard to get them involved if they don't see any connection to what they're doing currently at their work. So looking for ways to support their current work with the participatory process is one of the ways that like could be make a better claim for a participatory process in the classroom if they don't see it as a waste of time or something that is different from what they have to do by a curriculum. So I think that that's like maybe an informal and subtle way to start seeing the benefits of implementing a participatory approach in the classroom.
Thank you. That's a great point. To pivot to youth participation, Santiago and Emily, you both spoke about the way that the recommendations that the youth produced were actually taken into account by the government. So I'm curious if you have any tips to ensure that youth participation isn't just symbolic, but really like valued by decision makers. Santiago? Yes.
Yep, sure. Well, first of all, I think it's impossible to guarantee that any input from young people and from any ordinary citizen or any citizen, in fact, might be taken into account. Like, I think there's a lot of work around expectation management to do that. If you take part in a participatory process, you are not necessarily going to have an impact. And I think that's something that we've been very clear with all of our initiatives that we supported with our partners on the ground, is to make sure to include that element of expectation management. And I think that is something that is very important for young people once they go into adulthood and they go into other form of political processes, whether it's voting, whether it's becoming a candidate themselves, or whether it's just taking part in a citizen assembly, whatever it is that you're not going to necessarily change everything. I think that is completely unfeasible, and it's very important to be very clear with that from the beginning. I think it's also crucial to have to tie the capacity building or any type of element of sort of teaching that it is tied to a concrete participatory mechanism or to a concrete dialogue mechanism, so the information and the knowledge acquired doesn't just stay in the moment, that it is actually used right away. So when we've done participatory process, we make sure that the capacity building takes place on day one, and then day two is literally them talking to government. Like, I think that's been super incredibly like impactful, because then you can literally go from the workshop straight into the dialogue with the government. I also wanted to make a very quick mention of a question that I got. I think I've lost it, from Pana Giotis, in terms of the insights for participatory budgeting and youth councils. That is an incredible question. And I wish I could have a very concrete answer into how that's happened, because I am not aware that it has fully happened. First of all, if you're talking about municipal youth councils, this is a very unique system in the world that, as far as we're aware, only exists in a few countries, and that includes Colombia, Philippines, and a few countries in Europe. If you're talking about national youth councils, I am not aware of a single case where this has happened. I might be corrected in the chat. What I would say is that two cities, as far as I'm aware, Medellin in Colombia again, and Cordoba in Argentina, have had youth-specific participatory budgeting processes. As far as I'm aware, Medellin doesn't have it anymore. It's not in the sort of current initiative that the municipality offers, but they have done it for a number of years. So I think I'll keep it there, Nikhil, and go over to Emily.
Yeah, thank you. Emily, do you want to weigh in on how to make sure that youth participation is taken into account in decision making?
Thank you. To me, I agree with my colleague. And I think that we have to convince decision makers that it's important to listen to young people, because we have to have this support of decision maker to build the capacity. I'm sorry. And they have to understand that the young people have the right to decide about their own future. Because if decision makers do not understand this, don't agree with this, it will be impossible to carry out of more meaningful participation processes, because we will just talk, discuss, but it will not be included in the government program or public politics. So we have to convince that it's important.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I will say that in the participation playbook that we shared, there is a section about advocacy. So, how can you build support for the participatory program with the decision makers? And I think a big part of that is, as you're saying, kind of like shifting their mental model of who is supposed to participate and making sure that they understand that youth have a right to participate. Okay, we got a couple of questions from registrants about measuring impact. So, how do we measure the impact of these processes in schools and with youth? And kind of like the individual level impacts, on students, on their feeling of agency, their behavior later in life, as well as, community level effects, policy and government effects. I will say that if you check out the impact data that we just published, we kind of, as I said, we did a literature review of the peer-reviewed literature, which in general, I would say a preponderance of the research is focused on these individual level effects. And there are a few really interesting empirical studies that actually study, like in a quantitative way, how these processes affect individual students' political skills, their self-perception of their ability to influence decisions, as well as kind of community level effects of their relationships with other students, their relationships with their teachers, and then also the government level effects of how they're moving from school participation to then participating in local government. But I think, the development of measuring impact of these participatory processes is still kind of nascent. So I think there's still a lot of work to be done to measure impact, and especially because a lot of these processes haven't been done for very long. With participatory budgeting, it really started in the late 1980s in Brazil, and then school participatory budgeting is even newer. So a lot of the studies are focusing on short-term outcomes of the processes, but there isn't as much research on long-term impacts and really showing like the societal level effects of school and youth participation. I'm curious because I know Co-Global, like you guys do a lot of studies and you shared a bit about this, Christian. Do you want to talk a little bit about how you guys think about impact?
Yeah, I we have done like as you mentioned a couple of a lot of studies on measuring like more like individual factors, so psychosocial development mainly, and we have. I mean, like you mentioned, it's something that it's hard to do because it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of resources in general, and so it's we've had the opportunity of working with the University of Malaga, the University of Cali. So they have provided some of the resources and expertise to carrying out like proper assessment. So we've done with the Agora, with the Children's Agora and Objective Sustainability, we've done some um, like a pre-post design, which is we do assessments before and after the intervention, and we've also done them with the control group and target group just to make sure that the any changes we see are due to the intervention by itself and not by I don't know the like random other variables. So and we do quantitative analysis and qualitative analysis as well. We have adapted or created questionnaires to measure these psychosocial variables. And we keep narrative records about other variables that are as easily measured, like group cohesion and like leadership skills development and how they treat each other. I mean, there are a lot of variables we have been measuring over the years. And well, I did mention a bit about the improvements we found in some of these variables, but I do want to focus on one specific because I think there's a lot of literature about this in like adult people. But we've also found like great improvements in psychological empowerment, which is just basically the ability of like feeling and perceiving yourself as more competent to exert influence in your environment. So, and we found that the program when they participate in programs like the Children's Agora or Objective Sustainability, not only do they feel more empowered, like they feel more competent, they gain more control about their environment, but they also learn more about how their environment works. They're about their political setting, about specific topics. And I think someone was asking about topics that are interesting for children or youth between 12 and 14 years old. And so they learn more about their environment. That's usually a topic that gets them very engaged, their surroundings. I don't know, maybe it's because they know a little bit about that in school, but they don't get to work a lot of it through it. But through this process, they learn more about what interests them. But one of the main impacts is about one of the facets of empowerment, which is that not only do they learn more and feel more confident, but they also their will to participate increases. So they are feeling more inclined to being involved in more processes. And this is something we've assessed over like a 2-year period. They're more engaged, they want to participate more, and that is something that if they enjoy, they develop more abilities to participate. So that's something that's, I think, very important at an individual level, at least.
Yeah, thank you, Christian. I also wanted to ask Santiago to weigh in on this because you mentioned kind of how we think about the success of these initiatives. So curious how you guys are thinking about impact.
I mean, it's a great question. And first of all, if we ask about the ultimate question to all of our initiatives that we're all talking about here is, does this make better policies? Does it? I don't think we have a full answer onto whether this actually improves policymaking and decision making. What we can say for sure is that this addresses a lot of the sort of issues or myth in between brackets that young people are disengaged from politics. By providing the space and by opening meaningful spaces, you will see that young people are very interested in participating. I think that in itself is a very huge metric for impact. What I would say as well is for us as the Youth Democracy cohort, a very, very big variable or metric is to what extent this is the first time that young people are participating in a formal process. Like I mentioned, I think in my first intervention, we really like to ask ourselves the question, to what extent would this have happened if we didn't intervene? Like if we're only engaging urban, highly educated elites, even if on paper they look diverse, even if on paper you have 50-50 gender balance, you have representation for people with disabilities, from indigenous groups, are these the people that were going to participate anyway, and who are anyway going to become great political leaders because they are capacitated and that's who they are? Or are you engaging ordinary citizens that would have not had the chance to do so otherwise? And that applies to anything. That applies to whether a citizen assembly, which of course I think, as I think it was Christian who mentioned, like if you do sortition, you can have new people, whether that is just a generic basic policy dialogue, whether it's an event, like even if we have an event where we're sending people, we like to ask the prospective participants if they've attended conferences before, international conferences, because we like to, I think it's very valuable to have people who have never attended international conferences before. So I think that is a very huge metric for us, if I can end it on that.
Yeah, thank you, Santiago. That's really interesting. I think we have time for one more question. I think, a lot of this work is focused on including youth and children. But I think within inclusion, you can get a bit more narrow because even within these spaces, certain students or youth can feel alienated. So I'm curious how you approach um, ensuring the inclusion of students with other marginalized identities, such as based on migrant and refugee status, neurodiversity, racial and ethnic minorities, LGBT students and youth. Sanskriti, do you want to share a bit about how you guys approach this?
Yeah. So there's, I guess, there's a lot of migration in India anyway, internal migration. And we do have situation of multiple languages in the same school. So having resources which are in different languages, firstly. Also, I think tasks which recognize or celebrate different knowledge that children from different communities bring, their culture, their language. Those are certain things that certainly add to the kind of projects that students take up in the environmental work and the environmental education projects. The other is, for example, in nature-based education that we take up is, so let's say for visual impairment, then, employing different senses. There's hearing, or there's touch, and there's smell. So providing immersive experiences that are employing multiple senses. That's something that we try to do. But it is certainly a challenge because I think teachers firstly need to have both the skills, and the time to be able to do this. So it remains quite a challenge to be able to be really inclusive when there are particularly difficult barriers to surmount, both for the learners and for teachers to be able to find good ways of being inclusive. I don't know if others have perhaps more experiences to share.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that, Sanskriti. I'm just looking at the time, so I think we're gonna have to start wrapping up now. But I really appreciate everybody's insights. And of course, like I think we could have like another half hour or more of conversation. But I hope that this is a great start for everybody here in the audience to delve into these issues. As we wrap up, I do want to share different opportunities that you can engage with this work as well as with People Powered. So as I mentioned before, I'm just going to share again the slides with the links to our different resources. So next slide, please. So again, you can get step-by-step guidance that incorporates a lot of the insights that we talked about today in the participation playbook. I also encourage everyone to explore the impact data that we've produced in both a PDF research brief and in an Airtable, and then also explore the resource compilation, which has been developed by different organizations working on these issues. I also want to share that there are a few different capacity building opportunities that People Powered is organizing, and we have an actually open application for a couple of different accelerators. One is the Climate Democracy Accelerator, which participants receive an implementation grant for. The other is the Democratic Innovations Accelerator, which is focused on Europe. And it says, just so you know, it says the deadline is November 30th, but just a little secret, we're going to extend the deadline until December 8th. So keep that in mind. And then another support opportunity that you can take advantage of is our Rising Stars mentorship program, in which you would be paired with an expert mentor and receive 5 free sessions of mentoring. I also encourage anyone to join People Powered as a member. Next slide, please. We are a member-based community, and members can benefit from fundraising support, preference in people-powered contracting opportunities, as well as peer networking, decision-making power. As I mentioned, the school participation resources are the result of the People Powered Decides annual member decision-making process. So please do consider applying for membership. And I think that's all I wanted to share. Ryan, yeah, okay. Yeah, so those are all the next steps to keep in mind. And then Ryan, could you also share the contact page? Okay, yeah. So please get in touch with us. We'd love to hear from you, and we really appreciate your time joining us today to participate in this discussion. And I want to thank again all of the speakers today for making this a really rich event.